This is the Criterion Creeps podcast, and tonight, first up, we are talking about Black Narcissus from 1947, directed by Michael Powell and Emeric Pressburger. The tagline for the movie: a story of exquisite yearning in a strange and beautiful land, towering over the screen as the mountains that saw it happen. And the synopsis from Letterboxd: a group of Anglican nuns, led by Sister Claudette? How is that even pronounced?
Claudette?
Claudette? No, it's Cloda or something like that.
Let me figure this out.
I
You're
can't.
horrible
I just
with
watched
words.
this. I just watched this movie a week ago, and
Cloda.
Cloda.
Yeah.
Sister Cloda are sent to a mountain in the Himalayas. The climate in the region is hostile, and the nuns are housed in an odd old place. They work to establish a school and a hospital, but slowly their focus shifts. Sister Ruth falls for a government worker, Mr. Dean, and begins to question her vow of celibacy. As Sister Ruth obsesses over Mr. Dean, Sister Claude becomes immersed in her own memories of love.
Cloda.
Cloda. So this is another great synopsis from our friends at Letterboxd, whoever copy and pasted that from IMDb or whatever.
It's more info than we usually get.
Yeah, I guess it's in the middle, I suppose. So this is a movie that I watched probably like 8-9 years ago. Probably about when the Criterion Blu-ray first came out, after it got re-released, and it was just like one of those like, oh, it's Powell Pressburger movies. It's supposed to be an all-time classic movie. It's about nuns, woohoo! And what I don't know. When I watched this movie back when, going into it, I was just like, whatever. But I remember watching it and being like, that movie's really good. I like that movie. And like there's like kind of like the handful of like really iconic scenes that kind of stick with you. And that's all I kind of remembered on rewatch with this. I think actually even the Blu-ray of this I bought for like, it was like $27 or something like that at Future Shop, back when Future Shop existed and when we had stores that sold stuff on sale for Criterions once in a while. But now we have the internet for that once every couple months. Anyways, so Black Narcissus, this was a rewatch for me. This movie is based on a novel, RJ. Were you aware of that?
Don't make stuff up just to have filler in the show.
Written by a lady named Rummer Godden, Margaret Rummer Godden. And I actually found it really interesting reading about her because she was kind of like this main character here, played by Dana Kerr. She's English, and then she wound up in Colonial India, which is, I guess, now Bangladesh. And she was raised there, went to girl school, and she went back to Calcutta in 1925 and opened a dance school for English and Indian children. And she ran the school for 20 years with the help of her sister. And like, so it was like, oh man, that's like really interesting that this movie is like, it's not just someone making up shit about like, this is the way the land is over there, and that's it. Like, no, this is actually grounded in like an experience, I guess, of the author. The book came out in 1939. And so, like, when I was watching this movie, I kind of I was thinking it was like a period piece, because I guess, like, when I think of religion, I think of, like, old things. Like, I don't think of, like, oh, this is, like, movie is actually set in 1947 or thereabouts. I guess the first thing that you could talk about with this movie is the way that it was shot, which is with Technicolor. And this movie's got some pretty ridiculous colors. And the cinematography and production stuff is all pretty amazing when you realize that this movie was not shot on location. Like, this movie was like shot on like sound stages and with matte paintings and whatnot, and like you wouldn't know that. Like, it was like shot on like a location, but it was like in this like crazy garden in England that this like former Indian army man had like made for himself. So they used that as a backdrop. And this movie is kind of like, just, I mean, if you're going to shoot a movie that's like, it's supposed to be in the Himalayas, you are going to kind of explore this idea of the sublime, RJ, which is just like this like crazy, ridiculous backdrop of nature and this environment that is unlike one where I guess like the Westerner would live, which is just like, you know, wherever. But like when you go to these like extreme locales, where like right where other people live, and they're just like, oh, we're used to it. This is just our backyard. This is where we live. When you're like seeing these gigantic mountains, and you're really aware of the like passage of time and our insignificance in the universe, looking upon these great sights, that is the terror of the sublime, where it's just things that make you feel insignificant. So that's the backdrop of this movie, and it takes this like kind of classic idea that is probably one of the most appealing things to me about stories that are like, I guess, religious novels or religious movies, like say Silence, Scorsese's movie, where it's like you have these people driven by their religion and faith going to these edges of the world to kind of pontificate their worldview and to help the people around them, to save them through the word of God, leading through their good example, and how misguided that might be, depending on your viewpoint. Anyway, I think this movie's terrific. I like this movie quite a bit. Yeah, like it really feels like, and there's a point where it struck me is this is like a Werner Herzog movie, just like about 30 years earlier, but it's like a British studio movie, so it's fairly safe. It's fair, like, because like Werner Herzog would have made this movie, but he would have brought his entire crew to the Himalayan mountains and shot it that way. And so it would feel completely differently, but like just the thematics, like it feels like, especially when you compare it to like the other like Powell and Pressburger movies that we've watched and the other one we watched, this movie is like pretty out there, I guess, compared to their other output, like Red Shoes and stuff like that. But there's still like this sense of like internal character, like an internal mechanisms.
Conflict.
Yeah, like just the things that are driving these characters, where it's like they're having these like these fever dreams and stuff like that, and like just like where things start breaking down, like between Peeping Tom or Red Shoes, where like things are like, whoa, that's like pretty strange. And look, like, I don't know, I've kind of babbled on a lot. I've got more to say probably once you've talked about the movie. What did you think of Black Narcissus, RJ?
So I realize now that I made a pretty bad mistake. I didn't really realize that this was a nun movie. And if I had, I would have watched Sister Act this week to pair well with this. I talk about Sister Act all the time, and I feel like I really blew it. So I don't know if we're ever going to have another nun movie on the Criterion Creeps.
You never know.
We might. All right, so I think the Black Narcissus is very obviously a beautiful looking movie. I think it is shot pretty spectacularly, with all the sets and all the magnificent colors and just the design of everything and all these wonderful painted stuff. Hey, did you know that this won Best Cinematography?
I would not be surprised.
It did. So I think this movie is quite pretty. I think they do a good job with all these inner conflicts, as you mentioned, with these characters who I think it's an untapped resource, or maybe not. I don't know that much about nun movies, but I feel like there's a lot of potential there for people who actually, like the people who do become nuns. They probably got a lot going on. Like there's probably a lot of stuff where it's like, I regret a lot of what I did, or it's like, I wish I could have done that. It's like, there's this old life that I wish I had. You know, it's probably pretty hard. It'd be hard to be a nun.
Well,
and then
so one thing maybe I'll mention now is, I guess when this was released in America, a lot of the like Deanna Kerr backstory stuff was edited out.
Deborah.
Yeah, Deborah. It was just removed from the movie, and which is like, wow, like talk about gutting the story. Like it's like that's like a big chunk of the movie storytelling. Whether or not maybe like, I don't know. It's just like it's reminded me of with Qui-Gon, where they chopped out the like arguably the best story.
Yeah. Well, it serves as like a support beam for the movie as a whole, because like you see her backstory, but the movie is like all of these nuns have these things that they're like yearning for, kind of, and it's like it's that jealousy between them and like playing off of each other. So I think getting one of those characters' backstories, the main character, it allows you to like maybe visualize that a little easier, where it's like, yeah, they all probably have stuff going
So,
on.
so the reason though it was edited out was because the like Catholic Decency Legion, whatever the fuck,
Oh, yeah.
those joyless fuckos, they were just like they didn't like this idea of like
A nun.
humanizing a
Yeah.
nun, which is like
Yeah, I get it.
it's like I mean that's back in the day when they're like oh before whatever what is it called, RJ, the second wave, that old John Pope two.
Second wave? Are you talking about like new wave music in the 80s?
Yeah, yeah.
When
After
Pope John Paul
yeah,
the second came?
he brought in new wave music, and
Yeah.
then he opened up things a little bit,
Well,
relatively.
him and Morrissey did a lot of things that they don't get credit for.
Right.
But yeah, around there. So I know I get that now.
Yeah.
So I was talking a little bit, but I didn't say I do like this movie.
Hmm.
I think it's pretty good. I think it's like I can understand why it's probably a lot of people's like favorite movie, and or maybe not favorite, but
Yeah.
influenced a lot of people. Like I think the one I always heard is like, oh, Martin Scorsese loves this movie.
He loves
And it's-
he loves all their movies because
Yeah.
he loves Red Shoes as that's his top one. But yeah,
Yeah.
he loves all their movies.
Yeah, so like watching this, I was like, I see why like Scorsese loves this, and it's like I can see like the influence and stuff there. So I think this movie is really good. I didn't love it, not for any reason. It's just like I think everything fits really good. It looks great. I think the dialogue and the like, just the story itself is good. Or is it like it's great? The characters are great. I think there's a lot of really fun characters. So I think this movie is like it's great. But I don't know. It didn't really like evoke any emotional response in me where I was like, oh man, it's like wow, like which like movies don't have to do that either. But when I
Mhm.
was I was thinking back, because when like you brought up the Red Shoes, that was a movie like I had no idea what it was, and I watched it and I was like, man, this is a good show. I was like, I really like this movie. And then there's like other movies where like doing this show, you watch it and it's just like holy shit, it's like this is like a great movie. Like I don't have this like super high on my list, but like the one I'm thinking of is like Autumn Sonata, where I was like, man, that really like stirred stuff up inside of me. It's like what a personal like emotional movie. And so like it doesn't movies don't have to be like that either. Like I was just
No.
talking about how much I like fucking Sister Act. Like that doesn't make me like feel different on the inside either.
Right.
But I don't know, it just kind of I was like this is a great movie. It's just but I don't have a huge investment in it. I was like I might watch this again down the line in many years. But my initial response was like, I like it. I think it's a very well done movie.
Mhm.
I just don't love it or anything. And like I have a few individual things too, but that's
Right.
my general opinion.
Yeah. I never. I don't know. I'm trying to think because this movie kind of fits into like my love of like failed colonial adventure. Because there's
Oh,
like,
yeah.
what, like I don't know if I've lent you like The Man Who Would Be King. Have you watched
Yep,
that?
yep.
Okay, like that's like I love that movie. Like I think that movie is awesome. And like yeah, like the Werner Herzog stuff. Even like to a lesser degree, something like Treasure of Sierra Madre. Like
Yep.
I love those types of movies of just like people going to places maybe they shouldn't and like dealing with the villagers or
Yeah.
the inhabitants, and those things usually end badly in one way or another. And this movie has all those things going for it, but it's like it's the odd out because it's about like a woman's experience of this, because usually it's all men. Like you always get the story of like the men going out onto the fringes or out to those edges and their story, because realistically they were like the ones going out. So this is kind of a different thing where it's like the men have already failed, and which is like
Yeah.
that's a really cool idea. Like the monks tried to do it and they botched it. They don't know
Yeah.
what happened, and now it's like well now. But it doesn't drive that home. It's not like this is like the Ghostbusters remake version of like that, right? It's like
No.
this is a story
Yeah.
about these nuns who are going to set up like in like the hubris of like, or because was it Saint Faith is going to be the name
Yeah.
of the school, which is like amazing. It's like how ballsy is that? It's like this is Saint Faith. This is what this movie is
Yeah.
about, and we're going to set it up in the land that like Christ forgot, and like it's gonna be up in this fucking mountaintop, and we're going to save all these like fucking poor savages that don't know any better. Like that is the attitude, and that's like what the attitude was. This movie like came out right at the when like Britain was leaving India.
Yeah.
like they were handing it back, and it's like, oh, this movie came out like right around the same. Like it was in production before that happened, but like
Mm-hmm.
that's how this movie ends too, is with like in defeat. And like which is like in itself like this beautiful shot of her looking back as like the clouds kind of take back over this like building that is like unreproachable without reproach. I don't know. I'm blathering.
Mm.
Anyway, so this movie, I think, like it just like it ticks all my boxes. Like again, like I don't know if I'd say like I love this movie. This is like one of my top 100
Mm-hmm.
movies of all time. But I think it's like I think it's a fantastic movie. I think it's one of the better movies that we've watched in a little while. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, there's like great things about it. I mean, Mr. Dean's legs, for instance. Look, I mean, look at that guy's gams in that movie. They're amazing.
His gams.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like Mr. Dean. I like that they chose this like heartthrob guy to like tempt the nuns. He's always like walking around with no shirt on.
Oh yeah.
Like whether it's intentional or not, he's just like this man.
Oh, it's
he's got like
yeah.
there's like monkeys and birds hanging around, and there's one scene I fucking just busted out laughing because I was like, what? Where it's like Christmas, and the nuns are all in like the chapel singing, and that guy just opens the door in a huge fur coat, walks in, and there's like a stool with like the hymns like printed off, like or like written down like papers on the stool, and he walks up and he just fucking knocks it over and walks by, and then like the general guy comes and like picks it up and puts it back, and I was just like, what the fuck is going on? I was like, why is he like this? He just comes in and fucking knocks over the stool for like no reason.
Right.
I dug it. I think that guy's pretty fun. That's
Yeah.
what I mean. The characters in this this movie are high class.
And like all the nuns too, like they're all like
Yeah.
they all have like their specific characters and stuff like that, and they all wind up in the same place mentally where they want to leave for like convincing reasons. And it's like it's kind of nice that there's like only 4 characters that you're really focused on, and you're watching each of their like struggles. And like so there's like Sister Honey, and then I can't remember the name, the gardener one, who's just like there's like that shot of her looking out across Aya, and that shot of her look or anyway
Someone else.
looking out across like the landscape, and you're just like, oh, I'm just like when I'm up here, something about the atmosphere, and it's like almost like kind of this like Lovecraftian sort of like air space where you're like these characters, like, there's something happening. They're like, oh, it's this place. There's something about the air and the light, and like you just start thinking about your own thing, and the wind never stops. It's just like really I don't know. It's a great little movie for those reasons, that like, oh, it's just like good little character stuff that a lot of movies don't bother doing, and the movie seems to do it really effortlessly because it's such a smooth watch. Like this movie just like wrapped up, and I was like, oh, that's done already, and like I wasn't like really taking a ton of notes, but there's the one bit that I love. Think like looking back here too is like when there's like the old man, the mystic, who just sits.
Oh yeah.
And that's all he does. And there's like when she's complaining about this guy who's on their property. It's like all these people mill around, and they're not. They shouldn't be here. Someone should ask him to leave. You need to get rid of him. He can go elsewhere. And she's just like so frustrated about this. And then like Mr. D just throws out, "Oh, what would Christ have done?" And I'm just like, that's like the response there would be to take it to the roast and toast in the newspaper and bitch about this rotten old bum sitting on my property that attracts other dirt bags. That's what many Christians would do these days.
WWJD, boy.
Yeah,
You know.
but that I thought was great, and I mean it doesn't like pay off in this big dramatic fashion like at all. It's just this sort of backdrop thing that's like, oh, you're in a place where like the rules are different, and you're not like you're not worshipped the way that you're used to in other parts of the world that you've shown up and put up stakes in.
Yeah.
So that was good. I'm not. How did you feel about the brown face? That like it's interesting that like no one talks about the browning up in this movie the way that they do when it's blackface in like say Swing Time, and it's interesting. I'm sure there are people who probably also find that offensive, but like you do not hear it the same way. So I thought that it's like interesting because it's like I know there's like a
Yeah.
very there's like a different history and why I know in America why it's like a hot button issue, but it's like
Hmm.
I'm watching this and there's like Gene Simon and it's like yeah they found this young girl and she plays like the Indian sex pot girl,
Hmm.
but it's like yeah and then because like Sabu
Yep.
I mean he's legit, but there's like his father the general, I mean that guy's
Yep.
like almost comical like Indian face, but
Yeah, I didn't think it was like bad. I did the only thing I thought too. I was like, it's a little weird that they got like real Indians and then white people
yeah.
dressed up like Indians. I was like, they had one. They could have probably got two more if they wanted to,
Right.
but maybe maybe they're just like, no, we got one real one. We're gonna get a pass on this.
Well, they got because like they actually I was reading they actually a lot of like that community lives like in this one like I don't know this one community that's where they live and it's like oh wow we'll just cast them and they can be extras kind of thing to add that authenticity.
Hmm.
Yeah. So and then I guess like the other big story arc to talk about would be like the Sister Ruth story,
Yeah.
which is uh like it's fascinating. It's an interesting thing because it's like she's obviously mentally ill, right?
Yeah.
Like, and but it's like, why is she being sent off? Like, because maybe in 1947 there's like, oh, maybe like a change of vocation and area
Yeah.
will like cure her and she'll be better off. But it's like
Hmm.
she seemed like pretty poor off like as soon as she showed up, and it
Yeah.
just like gets worse and worse. And because she was like already like a bad seed, I guess, it
Hmm.
just like her like this extreme level, like because actually one of the horror books I've got on just like on the history of like hysteria in like movies of women in horror, like it's called House of Psychotic Women.
Hmm.
This movie's mentioned about it because there's sometimes people who refer to this as like having like a horror element, which is like definitely maybe in the last act. There's like it turns kind of almost to
Thriller.
a thriller. I've seen some people because of the way like
Yeah.
it feels more like a Mario Bava movie in a lot of ways. I think that's just like the color
Sure.
because of like
Yeah.
the whole staging of it and her like moving
Yeah.
through the space. There's like the one shot of her like at the doorway with her hair wet and she like
Mhm.
she looks like something out of like a
The close up in the eyes. Yeah.
yeah. Well, there's like yeah when Clodagh opens up the door and
Yeah.
and this Ruth and it's like her all dressed up like as a regular person. It's like a shock because this
Yeah.
whole movie you've seen nuns and they're like totally in their habits and
Mhm.
they like you've kind of just oh they're all nuns and then you see her and you're like hit with like oh fuck like that's right she's still a woman like she's still like
Yeah.
but it's like oh and she's like awoken to this like her sensuality is a word I've seen
Mhm.
thrown around describing this movie, and her putting on her lipstick and stuff like that, and her
Yeah.
hair done, and her like this dress that she got, and
Mhm.
you're like, wow, like it's such a, I don't know, it's a really crazily well done beat for this
Yeah.
movie. And I'm like, oh, that like is super effective.
Yeah. You're just like, wow, where did she get all this makeup and hair, like curling iron? No, it
Yeah.
is effective, but I did think that I was like, where'd she get all this shit? I guess maybe the young Indian lady
Well,
who
'cause-
is always done up, probably from her.
Well, there's like, yeah, obviously there's still ways to beautify yourself, but I mean, she also had that package like with her dress in it, and it's potentially that she's been gathering other things.
Mhm.
And yeah, there's another thing that I made a note of is that I think this is the first time I've ever been made aware of nun footwear, because there's like there's like the struggle at the end at the bell.
Mhm.
And like you see their shoes they wear under
Yep.
their habits, and I'm like, oh, look at those practical shoes. They're not just like barefoot or wearing like
Yep.
slippers. They're actually wearing like
Flip-flops.
real, like really well constructed 1947 era shoes that like, yeah, that's what people would wear. And it's like, that's a nice touch. I've never thought about what a nun wears.
And why not, man? The Catholic Church and Christian religions, they look after their own.
That's right.
Nice practical shoes.
Right.
Yeah. So anyway, yeah, it's they got some cool stuff in here. I like the perfume daddy. I think that was pretty cool. I like that scene when girlfriend was just turning water into wine or something.
Oh,
She held up
like,
water. Yeah.
adding the Berry mix kind of like
Yeah.
Kool-Aid stuff.
I was like, oh shit. I was like, what are they saying? But yeah, no, it's like I was saying, I think it's a good movie. Like I think it's a really good show. It's just I was like, yeah, I like it. I might watch it again one day. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't change my life, man.
Well, most movies don't do that.
Most movies don't.
Can't hold it accountable for that.
Well, Sister Act.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Yeah, look at the mileage you've gotten out of that material.
Yeah, see, I've been doing that since like day one. See
Yeah.
how far it's gotten us? I'm not
Yeah.
gonna be making Black Narcissus jokes in another
No, that's true.
100 years.
Yeah, that's very true.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I think that's it for Black Narcissus. We'll take a very quick break, and then we're going to talk about I Know Where I'm Going from 1945.
You didn't shout the last part of that. There's an exclamation point there.
There, I know. For the second film, we are talking about I Know Where I'm Going! Exclamation
There you
mark
go.
from 1945. Powell and Pressburger directing again. Synopsis from Letterboxd. Plucky English woman Joan Webster travels to the remote islands of the Scottish Hybrids in order to marry a wealthy industrialist. Trapped by inclement weather on the Isle of Mull and unable to continue to her destination, Joan finds herself charmed by the straightforward, no-nonsense islanders around her and becomes increasingly attracted to naval officer Torquil McNeil, who holds a secret that may change her life forever. So, I had never watched this movie before. This is probably though one of my favorite movie titles that for a movie I've never seen, because it's just like I love it's got this big exclamation mark on it. It's very commanding, and it kind of speaks to the like lyrical pretension of the Criterion Collection. That it's like, of course I Know Where I'm Going is in the Criterion Collection. Of course it is. So this movie's got recent Criterion gal Wendy Hiller of Pygmalion fame.
Yeah, I was happy to see her.
So she shows up here. So I didn't really know much about this movie at all. I didn't even bother reading a synopsis. I was just kind of like, wash over me, movie. Tell me what you're about. And we're supposed to believe that Wendy Hiller is like 25 years old. And even like she's only like 33 here. I thought that was like, she looks way older than 33. Like
she has an old face.
There's like, okay, so not to be like beauty shaming, but like people age differently now than they used to. Like if you look at what like a fucking 30-year-old looks like now compared to like what like a 30-year-old like hockey player looks like back like 50, 60 years ago, it's crazy. Like people can look like real bags of shit, and like they're totally healthy, but man, life was harder in the early 20th century. So sorry, Wendy. So that put me off the movie kind of real quick, because I was like, really? I'm like, she's supposed to be 25 and this vibrant young woman, she doesn't look that way at all. Because like plus like she's older here than she was in Pygmalion, because Pygmalion's like 7 years earlier than that, so she was like 26 there, and so she was closer to that age there. And even then, like she's like not this like Audrey Hepburn looking young woman, I guess. I don't know.
She's not forever young.
Yeah. So anyway. And then pretty well my note here is this certainly has that summertime vibe.
Yeah, it does a little bit. A little bit.
Yeah, so I didn't like this movie at all. This movie is pretty well one gear and one gear only. It just kind of, I don't know. So this is a story, this Joan Webster. She's a woman that's always known since she was a little girl. She knows what she wants. In fact, she always knows where she's going. There's a there's a theme song that's like, oh, I know where I'm going, which is like cool. I expected that because I'm like, oh, it's, like, it's the title. It's the title of the song. It's like it's very 30s, 40s kind of idea. This woman, she's like, I know what I want. The first time like you see her interacting at the age of 25, she's telling this like guy that you're like, oh, is this her like sugar daddy? Oh no, it's her dad that she just calls darling, and she's like, I'm gonna get married to this rich industrialist, and I'm gonna live on this island, and everything's gonna be great. And he's like, oh, I don't know about all that, but she's on her way, and she takes a train, and there's a montage of her traveling through like miniatures of tartans and whatnot, and then she gets to this town, and then everything kind of stalls out there because she has to get to this island where the rich industrialist lives, and it's like rom-com stuff. Like this, like if this movie was like from 2010, I would probably found it just way more watchable. But you
know what's funny?
What?
Sorry to interrupt me. Andrea watched some of this with me, and she said the exact same thing. She's like, they should remake this with like Anne Hathaway. Yeah, pretty much. And I was like, yeah, it'd probably be good if Anne Hathaway was in it and it was made now.
Yep. there's this like so anyway. I don't know about why this movie just totally fails for me in a lot of ways because like these dudes know how to make movies, but there's just something about this movie that like I don't know if it's like the 1945s niche of it, and like this movie just is like, oh, there's this like I don't know, nothing going on. It feels dated to me. One thing is, I guess, like they wanted to shoot this with Technicolor, but they're actually waiting to make another movie that they were going to shoot in color, and they were waiting for the equipment, and they made this movie instead, like in between. Yeah. So it's like a toss off. They spent like a week writing it, and they were like, this is apparently like a moment of praise. It was like it came out so effortlessly. This movie that just like came out so complete. There's a quote of Martin Scorsese saying like he thought he had given up on ever finding another masterpiece, and then he watched this movie.
Come on, Martin.
I know.
Come on, Marty.
Yeah.
You old goof.
So let's see here. I have a note here. I think it's just about. Oh, yeah. So this is the actual thing about the Technicolor thing. Next, they were due to tackle a big film about the rocky state of Anglo-American relations, which would eventually become a matter of life and death. But in late 1944, there was no Technicolor stock available. What could be made quickly and in black and white? Powell asked Pressburger. The answer was something about a girl who can't reach an island, and by the time she can, she no longer wants to go. Why can't she go? Demanded Powell. Let's make the film and find out, was Pressburger's response. So,
oh, what a bunch of nerds.
That's the movie. This is like, after the fact, like mythologizing your shit. So yeah, my note here honestly was file this under who gives a shit. I just like could not get into this movie at all. Yeah, I don't know. That's about, what did you think, RJ?
Well, there's two really cool things that you forgot to mention.
Okay.
All those gigantic fucking dogs.
Oh,
when that lady comes in with like 19 of those huge, they're like,
what are those dogs called?
They're like Scottish setter pointers or Irish setter.
I like those dogs.
They're huge, which was pretty cool. And then I liked this is becoming a recurring thing. The Criterion cows made another appearance. Those really hairy bastards. So Andrea had watched some of this with me because I was like, I like these guys' movies. They're pretty cool. And I was like, this sounds like an Andy pick.
Yeah.
And she's like, what's it about? And I was like, well, there's this lady who's going to get married, but she gets stranded on an island, and then she learns that she likes the people on the island more. And she's like, yeah, that does sound good. And then we turn it on, and it's got like some fun credits. They're like interactive with the scenery. Like they're fun. And then we're introduced I think the intro has some nice narration, even though I don't like what they're saying. It's like, here's a young girl, she knows where she's going. It's like, is she going to the bus? No, she's going to the carriage.
Yeah,
she knows where she's going.
Yeah.
And I was like, all right, well, I kind of like what they're doing, even though I don't like that they keep going, she knows where she's going. It's like, is she going to business school? No, she's getting on this train. She's going to go get married. She knows where she's going. And then it was about at that point where like Andrea was just totally checked out. She was on her cell phone, and that's only like 8 minutes into the movie. Not even, like maybe 5 minutes in. Yeah. And I was like, I guess I gotta watch this fucking thing. And I know what you mean by summertime vibes, but Summertime is a good show. I would definitely watch Summertime
looks good.
Yeah, Summertime looks good, and it's a good movie, and it's got that beef steak, and it's super good. It's not super good, but I like Summertime. This movie's pretty boring. It's pretty bland, and I think one of the main reasons is the chemistry between these two people that you're supposed to believe fall in love with each other is not there. Because one, they don't interact very well together, because this lady's just like, I'm gonna go get married to this fucking guy I've like never met, or whatever the fucking plot is. And then there's this other guy who's like, okay, he's like, all right, like he never even cares. He's like, you do whatever you want, lady. And they're like, let's go see this castle. And he's like, okay. He's like, want to have lunch together? She's like, yeah, but let's sit at different tables because we're not like dating. And he's like, sure, fine. And then they go to this dance, and then like out of nowhere, they're like super close to each other, and he's basically like right in her face. And it's just like, where did this come from? It's like, it doesn't seem like these two people like have built that relationship
Right.
at all. Like it's just that's the problem with this movie for me at least, is that it's like I don't buy that these two people just fell in love with each other because of the 3 days they spent together.
Right.
You need a montage of them doing like fun shit, of like Anne Hathaway and Paul Rudd like running through the rain and like eating donuts and just like having fun with each other. You don't get any of that in here. And like I think that's where it really falls, because it's like, why, like you said, why would you care? Like who gives a shit?
Yeah.
And then at the end it's like, it's like, well, we'll kiss and go our separate ways, but it doesn't have any weight to it because you don't care. You're like, well, I don't really. It's like you don't feel bad for her, because it's just like you're annoying. You're like, I know what I'm doing. I know where I'm going, and you're like, okay, whatever. And you don't feel bad for him either. He's like, I own this island,
but I'm kind of poor because I have to like rent it out to the evil rich baron because he's rich and he's really taking advantage of me and the poor old town folk. And I'm like, yeah, that could work, but this movie doesn't. Like it just doesn't seem really all that well made or written to like convince the viewer of these things, of these stakes, to be like, oh, I really like these people and they're really being screwed. And maybe because like I expect like a certain amount of like what would you call it? Setup,
reverence.
Like just setup, like just give me some setup, please.
Well, no, see, that's the thing. Like, I think what we're both saying here, and the reason we both thought like a current day remake would be better, is because it's like all the ideas are there. Yeah. They just don't actually see any of them through, or they don't like explore them enough. And it's not like these guys can't do that. Like, we've clearly seen that they can with like Black Narcissus and the Red Shoes. It's like these guys clearly know how to make good movies and like dig into story and plot and all that shit. So I think that's what's disappointing most, Jarrett, is that I've come to expect these guys to be pumping out some all-time bangers, and then this one is just like, oh, well, that's kind of a bummer. What? Because I'm with you. Like I didn't really like it much either, but like it's just because it's like, well, I know these guys can make good movies, and the ideas are there. They just don't like. They don't hit any of them.
So I wonder why this movie is so critically acclaimed to a certain degree. It seems like people are really high on this movie, and I'm just like, I don't understand at all. There's like nothing here, like the copy.
It's fake fans.
Yeah, I mean the copy I was watching was just like a DVD quality, so maybe it's like not the most restored or anything like that. So, but at the same time, I was just like, I don't think that's this movie's biggest problem is the way that it looks, because it didn't look super spectacular. I guess it was like shot on locations and stuff like that, which are like, that's good to see, but at the same time, I'm like, oh, I wish I had characters that I was rooting for one way or another, rather than just like, hey, we're told that these people are like going to fall in love. I'm like, I don't feel that it was earned. And even by the end of the movie, you have this like, there's like a curse, right? And so we have old McNeil, who's like this like castle that he's not allowed to go into, because if he walks into, he'll be cursed by it. And the curse is that like, oh, because one of his ancestors like caught like his lover with another man and he like drowned them. He like fucking murdered these people, and the curse is that his descendants will like be like, they too will be like handcuffed to a woman and like trapped with them for the rest of their life. But then it's like, oh, it turns out to be a great thing, because now they're going to spend the rest of their lives together happily. It's like, what the fuck? It's like, it's bizarre. I don't know.
It is bizarre.
It's a nice soft little movie, I guess, for because Britain was still in World War II and kind of coming out of it at this point. So this movie, I guess, was like pleasant for that. But at the same time, I've seen better movies from the same era that were like was way better done, and like didn't have to be so. I don't know. It's just not that good. Not a good movie.
No, it's not that good, and it's a major bummer, dude.
Yeah.
So yeah, and it's there's not even that much to talk about. It's like, well, I guess that's it. That's the show.
When you're bummed out, you're bummed out. Hey, let's read some hate though. Who hates Black Narcissus? So Paul gave this movie 1 star. Powell and Pressburger's incredible stylistic energy feels wasted here. The fact that this is set in the Himalayas adds absolutely nothing to the narrative but ethnocentric oriental exoticism. The indigenous characters are framed as either childlike or non-human extensions of environment. Why not just set this in rural Ireland or something? Nah, I don't know.
Well,
It's like,
you wouldn't get those huge dogs then.
oh no, that's in Black Narcissus, my friend.
Oh well, what the fuck are we even talking about? Black Narcissus.
Yeah.
So, well, yeah, no, I don't totally. Okay, yeah, that's a bad statement because the sets and all those things. That's what's super cool about it.
Yeah, that is a really weird comment. Other than it's about how woke this guy is. So,
Yeah.
Anna Imhoff gave this 1.5 star and writes, "Knock knock, who's there? A masterpiece. Where? Right here. Where?
No.
Here. Where? Here? Okay, whatever. So great.
All right.
I don't know.
Well, at least they changed the formula to leaving reviews.
Yeah.
Where?
Yeah, yeah. Anyway, so and then so here's some hate going the way of I Know Where I'm Going.
Yeah.
Jason Barry gave this 1.5 stars. As is expected, the art direction is superb, but the slow, meandering story and performances barely held my attention. I don't even remember anything about the art direction, so I can't even give it that. Ben Rendich gave this 2 stars. Oh, if it were but a little less predictable or a little more creative, not with visuals, as it is quite playful at times, but with its elaborations of character. I Know Where I'm Going touches on real wisdom, but also plays the old game of woman meets world with a personal distance that leaves it looking feeble beside the constant nymph, Rebecca, the ghost in Mrs. Muir, or Roman Holiday.
I wonder what
or let me add, Summertime.
I wonder what the real wisdom is here. Like
I don't
that
know.
it's okay to. It sucks that you own your own island if you can't live there and you have to sell it out.
Yeah.
Like I don't. Hey, summertime's good. Stop ragging on summertime.
That's that's the one I pick on. It's just like
It's just because I pick on Fellini all the time,
Yeah.
and you get mad about it because he's your buddy.
my best bud.
Because you guys hang out on weekends, you call him at home or whatever.
Oh, you want to hear a couple of who loves I Know Where I'm Going?
Oof, I don't know if I. Well, you will, so it doesn't matter.
Rain Barrington, 5 stars. A well-acted love story with a brilliant screenplay.
Yeah.
Patrick Delmore, 5 stars. What an absolutely incredible movie this is. I only ended up seeing it because it's in David Thompson's Have You Seen? I've been watching a lot of films from the book since October 19th. The best before this was Gilda. I'm really coming to believe that the 1940s was the best decade for film. I also think I'm doing myself a massive disservice by not watching more films by the Archers, Michael Powell and Emeric Pressburger. I love their movies Peeping Tom, which is only made by one of them, but for whatever reason didn't come back to them until now. I Know Where I'm Going is the story of a woman journeying to Scotland at the end of the Second World War to meet her husband. We all know this, blah, blah, blah. The tone of the film was great fun before, and this is where I was really pulled in. I am a huge fan of Susan Cooper's book, which mixes Celtic legend and modern-day life together. This film delivers that amazingly. Incredible stories, music, and black and white scenery. It made me immediately order my own copy of the film so I can share it with friends.
No, I don't think you need to. You don't need to do that.
Oh, yeah.
No, you're okay.
Yeah. Oh, and one more here. 5 stars. Jim Donahue. Livesley and Hiller have chemistry for days. My God, that look he gives her while quoting a line from a folk song. You're the maid for me. The music is delightful and is beautifully shot. It's kind of perfect.
No, there's no look. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
There's nothing like there's no chemistry.
To be
between
fair,
them.
we might have both missed that look while we were looking at our phones or laptops.
I only briefly drifted away, so I tried my best, man.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, there you have it, folks. Black Narcissus, yes. I Know Where I'm Going, no. Yeah.
I endorse that statement.
Yep. After the break, RJ and I are going to be handcuffed together and drowned. But we'll be together forever, buddy. The bottom of the lake.
I feel like even before we watched this, that was what your plan was all along.
Yep. It's just like, hey, you should put this handcuff on RJ for no particular reason.
Hey, can you meet me down by the creek? I got to show you something.
Yeah.